Would you like to wield the power of the best deck in the old school format? Do you think you have what it takes to tame the spirit of this complex control deck? In this video, I will introduce the deck. I will present its signature cards as well as some special combinations they may have between them. I will also dive into its main strategy and how it plans to achieve it, wrapping up with some of its good and bad matchups. Let's see how far we can go understanding the deck. The deck is a control deck specialized in card draw and optimal exchange of resources. Because of its excellent job at drawing more cards than its opponent and handling their threats efficiently, it can be catalogued as a card advantage prison deck. The most optimal builds of the deck have 0 creatures, around 32 spells, and 28 mana producers. This is almost 50-50 ratio between the number of spells and mana producers. This shows clearly how mana hungry the deck can be. After all, establishing a draw engine while keeping your opponent at bay is not a cheap task. So, what are we supposed to do with so much mana? In order to figure it out, let's have a look at its signature cards. The cards that best represent the spirit of the deck are Giant Diatome and Disrupting Scepter. They are its most relevant pieces for long-term card advantage. Casting them and activating them every turn while having other mana sources open is the main reason why this deck requires so much mana in the first place. Other signature cards that require a high amount of mana to be cast optimally are Brain Gazer, Mind Twist, and Recall. They are a source for either card advantage or card quality. They are strong plays that completely change the game to our favor once they resolve, and become devastating if cast much earlier than expected in combination with Mana Drain. Mana Drain is an extremely powerful card since it denies a threat in one turn and grants us a strong play in the next. Use it early in the game in combination with one of the previous 3. Your opponents are going to love it. Oh, one last thing. These signature cards can't create a meaningful impact if we are not able to survive during the early game. So, in reality, the cards that truly make the deck incredibly powerful and represent its core are Disenchant, Swords to Plowshares, and Counterspell, and that's why we will always run 4 copies of each. It is time to see the deck's strategy. As mentioned earlier, the deck is a card advantage prison deck. Its main strategy is to slowly exhaust its opponent's resources until they can't operate anymore. And it's going to achieve it by making mana efficient 1-to-1 trades in the early game, and then breaking the game symmetry in the late game by making sure that it's drawing more cards than its opponent. This will tie an invisible noose around the opponent's neck that will suffocate them slowly until they have no cards in their hand and no threatening permanents. At that point, it shifts gears to end the game quickly using its versatile win conditions. One of the reasons why the deck is so hard to defeat is because all of its cards are dedicated to either stay alive or to create an imbalance of card advantage in its favor. That's right. It doesn't have a single card whose sole purpose is to win. Instead, it has very efficient cards that can be used for removal, as a draw engine, or as mana producers, that at the end of the game can also be used alternatively to kill you. In other words, the deck has absolutely no intention to defeat you, but rather prefers to lean back, watching you try everything in your power to win until you spend all your resources and you have nothing left. The level of frustration while playing against the deck is quite high, especially if the opposing deck has a high amount of creatures or a high amount of removal. On the other hand, the deck doesn't just win by itself. Piloting it requires a lot of experience, patience, and a deep understanding of the metagame. Using the right answer for the right threat is quintessential to always stay one step ahead of the opponent's plan. But we can only reach such a high level of right decision making once that we have played this deck for a long time, probably losing many games in the process, so playing with it can also be frustrating. Until you get the point, then nobody can ever defeat you. The way to play this deck optimally requires an understanding of the different angles of attack that are available to us, and using them wisely depending on the game situation and the cards that we draw. Nothing is more important than developing our mana base. The more mana that we can use each turn, the stronger the plays we will be able to present. The deck's early angles of attack are mana denial, hand disruption, and card draw imbalance. They are strong ways to keep the opponent from doing anything threatening, but be aware that choosing the wrong angle of attack will certainly make you lose the game. If you are unsure whether you should follow a particular angle of attack, just follow the main strategy, ensure a land drop per turn, and survive until you can start activating your Giant Home. Wait, are you telling me that I can just win by doing that?
Actually, yes.
You just have to be patient and use your resources wisely. That's all. We now know how to play the deck, so let's have a look at its matchup analysis. The deck is particularly good at removing creatures and drawing cards. It also attempts to play the long game and has many non-basic lands. This presents some advantages and disadvantages against other decks. In general terms, the deck is favored against decks that present creatures without disruption or mid-game threats without early pressure. Therefore, its good matchups are Zoo, White Winnie, Mono Black, Disco Troll, Ernamgeddon, Tax Edge, and Stasis. On the other hand, the deck is disfavored against decks that present early creatures with disruption or mid-game threats that attack mana development. Therefore, its bad matchups are Izzet Control, Jeskai Tempo, Esper Tempo, Attack, Artifact Midrange, and Underworld Winds. As you can see, stating that the deck is the best deck in the format can sound a little bit over the top knowing that it has several bad matchups. But it's important to mention that despite being bad matchups, an experienced pilot can change the odds to at least 50-50, due to the fact that it has answers to every opposing threat. Overall, I find this deck very challenging and very fun to play. It was my favorite deck for many years back in the 90s, and it is definitely my deck of choice for the old school format. It is worth mentioning that it was originally created by Brian Weissman, alongside other concepts that became essential for high-level strategy, like card advantage. I definitely recommend you to give this deck a try, or rather several tries, until you get comfortable playing it. Even if you totally hate it already, it will give you a good insight on how to defeat it. And you want to defeat it, right? Because you hate it, you hater. Anyway, this is not over yet. Stay put for the next video, where I will present a very solid deck list for this archetype, explaining a little bit more how each individual card impacts the game. Now that you have a general understanding of the deck, what do you think? Do you see any particular flaw in its main strategy? Do you agree with the good and bad matchups? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video and would like to watch more, consider subscribing and supporting me in Patreon. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.